Forest mysteries. The last rays of sunlight filtered weakly through the tangled branches, casting elongated shadows that danced across the snow-covered ground. A cold wind swept through the trees, causing the brittle twigs to groan and sway, their icy fingers reaching out into the dusk. Elena's steps faltered as her breath condensed into ghostly clouds, her eyes fixed on the narrow trail ahead. Her fingers tightened around the worn photograph pressed against her chest, knuckles blanching despite the woolen glove she wore. The muffled crunch of snow beneath her boots echoed unnaturally loud in the stillness, broken only by the distant, haunting call of a lone wolf echoing through the woods. A sudden gust of wind tore through the canopy, ruffling her coat and causing her to stumble. Her foot caught on a concealed root, buried beneath the snow's icy surface, nearly sending her forward. Instinctively, she reached out, grasping a nearby tree to steady herself. Her heart hammered, not solely from the effort, but from the sight that drew her gaze. Fresh paw prints, large and faint, smeared across the snow as if hurriedly made by something heavy and purposeful. Her breath hitched, and her grip on the photograph tightened involuntarily. She hesitated, eyes darting between the trail and the shadows that flickered at the edge of her vision. The prints led deeper into the forest, winding unpredictably between the trees. Her mind spun with conflicting impulses. Should she follow the trail, risking further danger, or stay put, waiting for dawn or rescue? The distant howling grew louder, a long, mournful sound that neither threatened nor reassured her, only amplifying her uncertainty. Her body trembled, but an inexplicable pull urged her forward. A shiver coursed down her spine, yet her instincts whispered that this might be her only chance to uncover something vital. Truth, answers, or perhaps her own fate. Carefully, she lowered her hand from the trunk, brushing snow from her coat, and took a tentative step toward the prints. The snow crunched softly beneath her, a fragile reminder of her vulnerability amid the vast, indifferent wilderness. She knew the forest was alive with unseen eyes, watching her, waiting. As she moved, the shadows around her seemed to deepen, the branches forming a canopy that muffled the last of the fading daylight. Her senses sharpened. Every rustle of leaves, every whisper of wind seemed amplified. The silence pressed heavily against her ears, broken only by her cautious breathing and the faint crackle of snow underfoot. Each step felt weighted, each sound a potential threat or sign. Suddenly, her gaze caught a flicker of light. A faint shimmer nestled among the trees, metallic or luminous, barely perceptible but undeniably present. Her pulse quickened. Was it a sign, an illusion, or a trap? Her mind raced with possibilities, but her body instinctively tensed. The trail of paw prints continued ahead, leading toward the glow, promising secrets or danger. She hesitated again, torn between curiosity and caution. A gust of wind, colder and sharper than before, swept through, causing her to clutch her coat tighter. Her eyes remained fixed on a mysterious light, her breath forming icy clouds. The snow beneath her softened further, losing its firm grip, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Shadows danced around her, whispering secrets she could not quite hear, and the air grew thick with anticipation. In that suspended moment, her thoughts drifted involuntarily to her lost child. The ache threatened to overwhelm her anew, the pain sharp and raw. Yet, amid that grief, a fragile spark of resolve ignited. Perhaps this path, uncertain and fraught with peril, was her only chance to reclaim some control, to find closure or understanding. Her fingers clenched around the photograph, once more, a silent vow forming within her. She made a decision. She would follow the trail, no matter how strange or unsettling it seemed. Her steps grew more deliberate, each one echoing her quiet determination. The faint glow beckoned, promising answers or only more questions. She drew a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill her lungs, and moved forward into the darkness. Suddenly, a piercing howl shattered the silence, not menacing but resonant with loneliness. Elena froze, every muscle tense, ears straining for any further sound. The wind carried the echo away, leaving only the whisper of the trees. Her eyes fixed on the faint glow, her heart pounding with a mixture of trepidation and fragile hope. Whatever awaited her, she knew she could no longer turn back. The forest had spoken. Her journey into its depths had truly begun. As she pressed onward, the trail of footprints grew clearer, leading her toward the mysterious shimmer. She sensed that her understanding was about to shift, perhaps revealing truths long buried or unleashing dangers she could not yet comprehend. Her resolve hardened. This was no longer just about survival, but about confronting what lurked in the shadows, both outside and within. The woods stretched endlessly around her, silent witnesses to her choice, as she stepped deeper into the night's embrace, determined to face whatever awaited. Elena's breath fogged her goggles as she pressed herself against the icy trunk, eyes fixed on the flickering glow dancing between the snow-laden branches. The storm's fury had intensified, howling around her with relentless force, whipping snow in a blinding spirals that obscured everything beyond a few meters. Shadows stretched and writhed, merging with the darkness, yet that faint, trembling light persisted, pulling her forward despite the biting cold that numbed her fingers and chilled her bones. Her heart hammered, not from fear alone, but from the strange compulsion that urged her to approach. She clenched her fists around her coat's fabric, feeling the tension ripple through her muscles. Every instinct screamed to retreat, yet curiosity rooted her in place. The flickering orb seemed alive, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat, its wavering glow casting fleeting shadows that danced on the snow. She took a tentative step, then another, each crunch of her boot muffled by the roaring wind. The storm's noise masked her cautious movements, but she caught the subtle rustle of leaves, an almost imperceptible whisper threading through the tempest. Her eyes darted across the obscured landscape, trying to distinguish the source of the light from the shifting shadows, her breath fogging her vision with every exhale. Suddenly, a shadow moved, silent, fluid, almost serpentine, between the trees. Elena's pulse quickened. Her gaze snapped to the spot where the figure had vanished, instinct sharpening her senses. She hesitated, then called out softly, voice barely audible over the storm's roar. "Who's there?" No reply came, only the wind's relentless howl swallowing her words. The silence that followed stretched thick and oppressive, broken only by the crackle of breaking branches and the distant, rhythmic pounding of her own heartbeat. Her eyes narrowed as she scanned the darkness, trying to pierce the oppressive gloom. Every flicker of movement seemed to carry a message, every gust of wind a whisper from the forest's hidden life. The glow flickered again, responding to her presence, as if beckoning her closer. A strange calm washed over her, conflicting with her unease. An almost hypnotic reassurance that this moment was part of something larger, something waiting to reveal itself. Then, a sudden, sharp snap shattered the silence. A branch breaking or a distant cry lost in the storm's chaos. Elena spun instinctively, her senses heightened. Her gaze darted behind her, searching for movement, but only snow and shadows danced in the wind's fury. A slow rustling emerged from the darkness, deliberate and measured, as if something was observing her, waiting for the right moment. Her cheeks stung from the cold, her fingers numb inside her gloves, yet she refused to retreat. Her breath fogged her glasses again, blurring her sight as she strained to detect any sign of life beyond the veil of snow and shadow. The wind howled louder, whipping her hair into her eyes, making her squint against the sting. Her fists clenched tighter, fighting the rising tide of suspicion and dread. Minutes felt like hours, each second thick with anticipation. She knew she could turn away, abandon her pursuit of the flickering light and the unseen watcher, but something deeper kept her rooted, an instinct to uncover the forest's secret. She steadied her breathing, listening to the faint pulse of the environment, focusing on the flickering beacon that seemed to pulse with a life of its own. A flicker of movement, quick, almost imperceptible, caught her eye. Her muscles tensed further. Was it a trick of the storm, or was something truly alive out there? Her mind scrambled to interpret the fleeting signals, the subtle shifts in shadows and light that defied explanation. A faint scent drifted on the wind. Earth moss, something wild and primal, that stirred a distant memory, or perhaps a dormant instinct she couldn't ignore. Suddenly, the storm's fury seemed to pause for a moment, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Elena's resolve hardened. She would wait, observe, listen. Her gaze remained fixed on the flickering glow, her body poised between hesitation and determination. The surrounding shadows seemed to breathe, alive with silent messages. Somewhere deep within, a fragile hope flickered, an awareness that she was no longer merely an outsider lost in the wilderness, but a part of its hidden rhythm. Then, out of the darkness, a movement, swift, almost invisible, caught her attention. Her muscles tensed further, her eyes narrowing. Was it a trick of the wind, or something more tangible? Her mind raced, trying to decipher the signals, the brief glimpses of motion that hinted at something unseen. A faint scent of earth and moss reached her nostrils, awakening a long-buried instinct, a whisper of something ancient and primal. The wind's howl grew louder, tearing through the trees, but Elena's focus sharpened. She stepped forward toward the glow, her body tense but her mind alert. This time, her approach was deliberate, more cautious, more purposeful. She needed to understand what was truly behind the flickering light, what force was guiding her here. Suddenly, the glow steadied, casting a pale illumination that revealed a faint outline of a figure just beyond her reach. Elena's eyes widened. She reached out instinctively, but the shape dissolved into shadows and snow, vanishing as if it had never been there. Her heart pounded harder, not from fear, but from a new awareness. Something had shifted within her understanding of this place. She paused, catching her breath, feeling the weight of the moment settle over her. The forest around her seemed to hold its breath, waiting. But now she saw it differently. The forest was alive, watching, waiting for her to accept its silent invitation. Her mind, once clouded with doubt, now carried a fragile hope, an understanding that even amid chaos and darkness, there was a path forward, waiting to be uncovered. A sudden, distant crack echoed through the trees. This time, a branch snapping or a subtle shift in the shadows, piercing the night's oppressive silence. Elena's breath hitched again, her eyes darting toward the sound. She saw nothing but darkness, yet the sensation of being watched intensified. The wind carried a faint, almost musical whisper, an invitation or a warning, something only the brave could begin to decipher. A movement closer now made her freeze. Her heart thundered in her chest, yet she remained motionless, eyes fixed on the darkened outline. The storm raged around her, but within, a quiet resolve grew stronger. Whatever secrets this night concealed, she would not turn away. She took a cautious step forward, toward the light, toward the unseen presence, her body tense, but her spirit awakening. The shadows responded, shifting subtly. The flickering glow grew steadier, illuminating the snow and revealing a faint silhouette just beyond her reach. Elena's eyes widened again. She reached out instinctively, but the figure dissolved into the storm's embrace. She stood alone in the swirling snow, trembling but unwavering, sensing that her understanding of this place had deepened. As she steadied her breath, a new realization dawned. The forest was alive, aware, and waiting. She was no longer merely an outsider lost in its depths. Somewhere within her, a fragile hope ignited, a belief that even in darkness and storm, a way forward existed, hidden just beneath the surface, waiting for her to find it. Elena's eyes fluttered open to a world transformed by dawn's pale light. The storm had spent itself overnight, leaving behind a landscape coated in icy silence. Thick, undisturbed snow stretched in all directions, shimmering faintly as the first rays pierced through the skeletal branches overhead. Her muscles ached from the cold, and her limbs felt stiff, yet a strange calm settled within her, as if the storm's fury had cleansed her mind as well as the land. She shifted slightly, lifting her head to survey her surroundings. Her breath formed fleeting clouds in the crisp air, mingling with the faint scent of pine and earth. The forest around her was eerily quiet. No howling wind, no rustling shadows, only the muffled stillness that followed chaos. Her gaze drifted to a few paces away, where Yuki watched her with unwavering, steady eyes. The WOLFDOG's coat was frosted along the edges, each breath sending a faint cloud into the cold. His stance was alert but cautious, ears perked forward, tail low but tense. Elena's eyes lingered on him, a flicker of gratitude stirring amid her lingering doubts. She remembered the chaos of the night, the howling wind, the shadows slipping through the darkness, the sense of something unseen lurking just beyond her perception. Now, the forest seemed frozen in a moment of fragile peace, yet she sensed that beneath the surface, something had shifted. Yuki took a slow, deliberate step closer, paws crunching softly on the snow. Her pulse quickened, not from fear, but from an instinctive awareness that she was on the verge of discovery. She hesitated, then extended her trembling hand toward the animal. Her fingers brushed the damp, icy fur, and Yuki pressed his head gently against her palm, a silent reassurance. After a moment, he stepped back and circled her once, then stopped, ears twitching forward. The wolf dog's cautious movements carried a message. Follow. His gaze shifted toward a narrow trail cut through the snow, a faint disturbance in the pristine whiteness. Elena hesitated, her mind racing with questions. Was this a sign, a guide, or a threat? Her fingers curled into a loose fist, then relaxed as she looked into Yuki's steady eyes, seeking reassurance. Taking a deep breath, she pushed aside her doubts and pushed herself to her feet. Her legs trembled slightly, but the sensation of snow crunching beneath her boots grounded her. She moved forward cautiously, Yuki shadowing her every step. The animal's presence was both a comfort and a reminder of how little she understood this wilderness, how much it demanded patience and respect. The trail ahead was faint, a subtle disruption in the snow that wound into the thicket. It zigzagged between tangled branches and fallen logs, a path worn by recent passage. Elena's eyes narrowed as she tried to interpret the signs, scattered paw prints, faint impressions where something had paused. The silence pressed heavily on her, broken only by her own breath and Yuki's quiet padding. She moved carefully, senses heightened, each step deliberate. The forest around them was a labyrinth of twisted branches and shadowed hollows, every crack of a twig or whisper of wind making her flinch. Yet she focused on the trail, her mind racing to decipher what had disturbed the snow, who or what had recently crossed this very spot. Yuki halted abruptly, ears twitching forward, his body tensed, nostrils flaring as he sniffed the air. Elena's gaze darted in the direction he indicated. A faint scent drifted toward her, faint but distinct enough to prick her senses. Something recent, something alive. Her stomach clenched, memories flickering, shadows, fear, an unexplainable presence that haunted her nights. But this feeling was different, not threatening, but charged, as if the forest itself whispered secrets just beyond her grasp. A sudden gust of wind swept through the trees, carrying a mixture of pine and damp earth. The scent grew stronger, more defined. Elena's heart beat faster, her mind racing to piece together the clues. She remembered the night's shadows, the fear, the unseen force that had unsettled her. Yet now a new awareness took hold. This was not just a threat, but a sign that something had recently moved through this place, perhaps something powerful or dangerous. Yuki moved forward again, nose to the ground, then stopped, ears twitching. He emitted a low growl, soft but unmistakable. Not a warning, perhaps, but a signal. Elena hesitated, then stepped closer to the underbrush, peering into the snow-dusted foliage. There, faint impressions pressed into the snow, an uneven trail that suggested hurried movement. Whatever had passed here was recent and larger than her own steps. A shiver ran through her, not from cold, but from a sudden, instinctive realization that she was on the cusp of uncovering something vital. The forest's quiet hum seemed to intensify. The creaking branches, the rustling leaves, her own breath, each sound amplified. She wondered if Yuki sensed it too, if he understood what lay just beyond her reach. She lowered herself to the snow, fingers brushing the icy surface. The trail was fresh, the snow disturbed in a hurried pattern. Whatever had gone this way hadn't lingered long, perhaps fleeing from something or searching for something elusive. Her mind spun with possibilities: another creature, an intruder, or something beyond her comprehension. Yuki's gaze remained fixed ahead, unwavering. Then, without warning, he moved forward, ears erect, body low. Elena's heart skipped a beat, then steadied. She followed, step by cautious step, trusting his silent guidance. The landscape around them stretched into a maze of snow and shadow, but a new resolve blossomed within her, an understanding that this trail, this moment, marked a turning point. Suddenly, Yuki froze, ears erect, nose pointed straight ahead. His body tensed like a drawn bowstring. Elena's eyes widened. She looked where he was gazing, beyond a tangle of branches, faint but unmistakable signs of recent disturbance. The snow here was scraped and clawed, marks that hinted at something powerful, something alive. A subtle shift in the air made her freeze. The forest's rhythm seemed to change. Branches creaked louder, distant rustling grew more urgent. Her senses sharpened, her heart pounding as she tried to interpret the signs. What had caused this disturbance? Who or what had recently passed through? Yuki emitted a low growl, warning or perhaps an invitation. Elena took a cautious step closer, peering into the underbrush. The faint impressions pressed into the snow suggested hurried movement, an animal or creature that had passed through recently, leaving behind clues. Her skin prickled with a mixture of curiosity and unease. Something was nearby, and it was larger and more unpredictable than anything she'd faced before. A sudden gust of wind swept through the trees, carrying a sharper scent. Earth, pine, something metallic. Her stomach clenched as memories surfaced, shadows, the darkness, the feeling of being watched. But now, that fear was tempered by a new sense of purpose. She realized that whatever was here, it was not just a threat, but a part of this wilderness's secret life. Yuki moved forward again, nose to the ground, then paused, ears twitching. His low growl grew louder, an unmistakable signal. Elena stepped closer, eyes fixed on the disturbed snow ahead. Whatever lay beyond could hold answers or danger. Her fingers tightened into fists, then relaxed as she summoned her courage. In that moment, she understood that the forest was no longer merely a silent witness to her journey. It was a living, breathing entity revealing its secrets, demanding her attention, testing her resolve. The trail before her was more than a sign of recent passage. It was a message, a challenge. With a steadying breath, she pushed herself to stand fully, her limbs trembling, but her mind clear. She moved forward, Yuki at her side, trusting that the path would reveal what she needed to know. The landscape stretched into a maze of shadows and snow, but her resolve deepened. She was no longer just a lost traveler. She was a seeker, ready to confront what lurked in the depths of the forest and within herself. As they advanced, Yuki suddenly halted, ears erect, nose pointed sharply ahead. His body tensed, muscles coiled like spring. Elena's gaze followed his, catching sight of a disturbance, a scrape in the snow, fresh and jagged. Her heartbeat quickened. Whatever had passed here was recent, powerful, and unmissable. A faint, almost imperceptible shift in the air made her freeze. The forest's rhythm had changed. Branches creaked more loudly. The wind carried a sharper edge. Her senses sharpened, her mind racing to interpret the signs. What had caused this disturbance? Was it a creature? An intruder? Or something beyond her understanding? Yuki growled again, louder this time. A warning, or perhaps a challenge. Elena took a cautious step forward, her eyes narrowing as she peered into the underbrush. The signs in the snow hinted at hurried movement, a creature trying to escape or hide. Her skin prickled with anticipation. Something was near, watching, waiting. Suddenly, the wind shifted again, carrying a colder scent, metallic, damp, familiar. Her stomach clenched, memories rushing back, shadows, the darkness, the feeling of unseen eyes. But this time, she felt a different kind of pull, a sense that she was closer to uncovering the forest's deeper secret, something that might change everything she believed. Yuki moved forward once more, nose to the ground, then froze. His low growl grew into a warning. Elena's heart hammered in her chest. She stepped closer to the source of his alertness, eyes fixed on the disturbed snow. Whatever was here was not just passing through. It had left a mark, a sign of its presence. She knew she was on the edge of understanding something crucial, something that might redefine her entire quest. The forest around her seemed to hold its breath, shadows lengthening, the silence thickening with unspoken secrets. Elena's fingers curled into fists, then loosened as she steadied herself. She was no longer merely reacting to the wilderness. She was beginning to read its language, to comprehend its hidden messages. Her gaze hardened, and her grip tightened on her resolve. Whatever lay beyond that tangled thicket, she would face it, not with fear, but with a cautious determination. The trail was leading her deeper into the unknown, into truths buried beneath layers of snow and shadow. And she understood now that her journey was no longer just about survival. It was about awakening to the forest's secret heartbeat and discovering her own strength within it. Elena moved cautiously into the silent clearing, her breath shallow as a biting wind swept through the trees. The cold air pressed against her skin, carrying with it the faint, acrid scent of smoke intertwined with something sharper, metallic, and unsettling. The remnants of the old campsite lay scattered before her, rusted pots, broken branches, and torn fabric caught on splintered wood, all cloaked in shadows that flickered with every gust. She paused, her eyes narrowing as she surveyed the surroundings. Her fingers brushed against a jagged piece of metal protruding from a rusted pot, the coldness seeping into her skin. Her gaze fixated on a faded, ragged fragment of cloth caught on a splintered branch, a remnant of her past, perhaps, or something more recent. Her hand trembled as she reached out and gently touched the torn edge, feeling the frayed fibers under her fingertips. A surge of conflicting emotions flooded her: sorrow, nostalgia, and an inexplicable sense of connection. Tears welled up, blurring her vision and threatening to drown her in memories. She remembered the softness of her child's blanket, the comfort it once provided, now lost amid her grief's chaos. Her fingers lingered on the fabric, tracing the frayed threads as if trying to cling to what remained of her past. The wind intensified, stirring leaves and whispering secrets she struggled to interpret. It carried a faint, metallic tang that prickled her nostrils, making her heartbeat quicken. Her mind raced. Was it from a recent fire, or something else entirely? Her grip tightened on the fabric, knuckles whitening as she fought to steady her breathing. Suddenly, a distant sound sliced through the silence, soft but persistent, like a faint cry or a call. It echoed among the trees, carrying a tone of desperation that stirred her instincts. She froze, listening intently, her eyes darting toward the source. The sound seemed to come from beyond the clearing, from the shadows that stretched like dark fingers. Hope flickered within her, mingled with caution. Could it be someone in trouble? Or was her mind playing tricks, feeding her fears? Her gaze flicked from shadow to shadow, searching for movement. Nothing obvious appeared, only the rustling leaves and shifting light. Yet, the sound persisted, tugging her forward even as her instincts screamed to stay still. She hesitated, then took a tentative step, each movement deliberate, as if venturing into the unknown might reveal the answers she sought. Her jaw clenched, tension tightening her features as grief and uncertainty clashed within her. The torn fabric still clutched in her hand, her fingers curling around it in a firm grip. The memories of loss threatened to overwhelm her again, but beneath that despair, a fragile resolve took root. She refused to turn away now, not after everything. A sudden gust of wind swept through, swirling leaves into the air, catching the weak sunlight in a shimmering dance. The scent of smoke grew sharper, mingled with something colder, metallic, piercing. She inhaled deeply, trying to decipher the layered odors. Her mind connected dots. Was this evidence of recent activity, or remnants of a tragedy long buried? Her eyes fixed on the torn cloth, then shifted to the shadows, her expression hardening with renewed determination. If someone had been here, if something had happened, she needed to uncover it. Her past was intertwined with this place, and she refused to leave without understanding what transpired. The ache in her chest reminded her of her loss, but it also fueled her resolve. She was no longer just a passive observer. She was an active participant in unraveling the truth. Suddenly, a distant shout pierced the air, a cry of distress, sharp and urgent. It echoed through the trees, carrying a mixture of hope and desperation. Her breath caught in her throat. Was it someone calling for help? Or was her mind playing tricks, feeding her longing for connection? Her grip on the fabric tightened, knuckles blanching, as she hesitated, torn between fear and curiosity. She fixed her gaze toward the direction of the sound, her body tense. Carefully, she took a step forward, each movement measured and cautious. The forest seemed to hold its breath, shadows lengthening as the wind whispered secrets she could not yet understand. But Elena knew one thing. She could no longer ignore what lurked in the darkness. Her journey into the unknown was only beginning, and that faint call was a fragile thread pulling her deeper into the mystery, and perhaps closer to the truth she sought. As she moved, her senses sharpened. The metallic scent grew stronger, more distinct, hinting at recent violence or a concealed threat. Her eyes darted around, searching for any sign of life or danger. The torn fabric in her hand became a symbol of her resolve, proof that she was on the right path, that her past and present were converging. The distant cry echoed again, more insistent. Elena's heart pounded, but her steps grew steadier. She was no longer merely an observer of her surroundings. She was now an active seeker. Whatever awaited her in the shadows, she would face it, not with fear, but with a cautious determination born of loss and hope. The wind shifted, whispering secrets she could not yet grasp. Shadows danced around her, and the scent of smoke intertwined with something colder and sharper. She inhaled deeply, gathering her courage. The clues, the torn cloth, the metallic tang, the distant call, had all led her here. She had to follow, to uncover what had happened and what was yet to come. Her eyes fixed on the darkening woods ahead, she took a final breath and stepped forward. The forest around her seemed to pause, waiting. The shadows lengthened, and the wind carried a whisper of secrets yet to be revealed. Elena's journey into the darkness was no longer a choice. It was her destiny, and with each step, she drew closer to the truth and to the answers that might finally bring her peace. Yuki's ears suddenly flicked forward, muscles tensing beneath her thick fur as her body froze mid-step. The wolfdog's alertness snapped Elena's attention to her companion's posture. Following Yuki's gaze, Elena's eyes narrowed toward the dense undergrowth ahead. The trail had narrowed even further, swallowed by tangled branches and a fresh layer of snow, yet the abrupt halt in movement carried a different weight, more urgency, more warning. She crouched slowly, her breath forming faint clouds in the icy air. Her fingertips brushed the cold snow, hesitant to disturb the fragile surface. Instead, she studied the ground, eyes tracing faint impressions pressed into the frost. Fresh footprints, smaller, hurried, uneven, veered sharply off the main path, heading toward the shadowed thicket of trees that loomed like silent sentinels. A surge of suspicion and curiosity gripped her. Who could have left these? Why now? Her fingers trembled as she brushed snow aside, revealing the impressions more clearly. Hurried, uneven steps with a few prints that seemed to stumble or slip. She noted the direction, deeper into the forest, toward a tangled mass of branches and roots that seemed to swallow the trail whole. Yuki pressed her nose against the ground, nostrils flaring as if scenting the air. Her gaze flicked to Elena, then back to the trail, silently urging her forward. The wolfdog's instincts pulsed with a quiet but insistent call, resonating within Elena's chest. She hesitated briefly, weighing her doubts against the faint pull of purpose ignited by this new lead. A sudden gust of cold wind swept through the trees, rattling brittle twigs and whispering secrets in the rustling leaves. Elena drew her coat tighter, glancing once more at Yuki, whose unwavering gaze fixed ahead. She understood that whatever awaited might test her resolve. Turning back now would feel like abandoning a fragile hope, something vital yet vulnerable. Carefully, she pushed herself upright, her boots crunching softly against the snow as she stepped forward. Her eyes stayed fixed on the faint trail, then darted toward the shadows where the footprints vanished. Every nerve in her body hummed with alertness. The forest silence pressed heavily, broken only by her breathing and the distant, irregular tapping of something deeper within. The rhythmic thumping drew her attention next, a steady, muffled beat echoing faintly through the trees. It was unlike any natural sound she had heard before, persistent, resonant, almost pulsating in time with her own racing heartbeat. She paused, listening intently, senses sharpening. Yuki moved cautiously ahead, nose to the ground, ears swiveling toward the source of the sound. Elena followed, her steps deliberate, each movement measured. The trail's direction became clearer, toward the heart of the thicket, where shadows stretched longer and the pounding grew louder, more insistent. As she advanced, questions flooded her mind. Was it another person, an animal, or something entirely different? Something she couldn't yet see or comprehend. Her fingers clenched her coat, knuckles white, but her gaze remained steady. Every step was a choice: to trust her instincts, to follow this faint but undeniable sign that perhaps, just perhaps, she was nearing answers. Suddenly, the underbrush parted slightly, revealing a small clearing illuminated by the pale glow of dawn. The air here felt heavier, almost charged. The rhythmic pounding intensified, resonating through her bones. She paused at the edge, eyes sweeping the scene. In the center of the clearing, partially hidden by shadows, something moved, an indistinct silhouette that seemed to be waiting, watching. Her breath caught in her throat. Her pulse quickened, yet she forced herself to remain still. Every instinct screamed that this moment was pivotal. Trusting Yuki's lead, trusting her own intuition, she took a hesitant step forward, snow crunching beneath her boots. The pounding persisted, steady, unrelenting, echoing within her mind as a reminder that this journey, uncertain and fraught with doubt, was also guiding her towards something essential. Maybe a truth long buried beneath layers of grief and silence. She clenched her fists, feeling the weight of her past pressing against her resolve, yet also sensing a fragile hope for what might come next. The shadowed figure shifted slightly, and the rhythmic sound faltered for a brief moment, as if acknowledging her presence. Elena's eyes fixed on the silhouette, her body tense, but her gaze unwavering. Whatever lay beyond that darkness, she was prepared to face it. A sudden flicker of movement caught her peripheral vision. The silhouette's hand, perhaps, or a subtle shift in posture. Her heart hammered louder, but she kept her stance steady, ready for whatever was to come. The pounding in her bones matched the thumping in the shadows, a reminder that her pursuit had reached a critical juncture. She had come too far to turn back now. In that moment, the figure in the shadows straightened slightly, and the pounding ceased altogether. Silence fell like a shroud, thick and heavy, broken only by her own shallow breaths. Elena's eyes remained fixed, waiting. She understood that this was not just a confrontation, but a revelation, one that might reshape everything she believed. A faint movement rippled through the darkness, and then a voice, soft, almost hesitant, drifted into the clearing. Elena's muscles tensed, her grip tightening on her coat. She took a cautious step forward, determined to meet whatever awaited. Her mind raced with possibilities, but her heart steadied with resolve. This moment marked a shift. No longer was she merely following Yuki's lead into the unknown. She was now actively confronting it. The shadows held secrets, and Elena sensed that her understanding was about to deepen, perhaps forever changing her perception of the past, the present, and what lay ahead. Elena's breath came in shallow gasps as she sank onto the uneven ground inside the shelter, her trembling fingers clutching the cold, battered necklace that once belonged to her child. The storm's fury had finally subsided, leaving behind an oppressive silence that pressed down on her chest, broken only by the faint whisper of wind threading through the sparse branches overhead. She closed her eyes, trying to steady her racing thoughts, but vivid memories flickered stubbornly. Images of a face she could no longer hold, a laugh now forever lost. The makeshift shelter offered little refuge. Twigs and patches of snow pressed against her back, and the biting cold seeped through the gaps in the fragile walls. She wrapped her arms around herself, seeking warmth that refused to come. Her fingers trembled as they traced the delicate chain of the necklace, feeling the familiar weight of metal against her skin. A silent plea escaped her lips, her voice a faint whisper carrying her child's name into the cold air. A tear slipped free, carving a slow path down her cheek, but she quickly brushed it away, biting her lip to suppress the ache. Inside, a tumult of emotions churned: grief, frustration, and a flickering hope that somehow, amidst this darkness, she could find a fragment of peace. Her eyelids fluttered, fighting exhaustion, but weariness pulled her into a fragile sleep, her body trembling with cold and sorrow. Outside, the wind had softened, yet the darkness remained thick and unyielding. The shelter's thin walls shuddered with each gust, threatening to collapse under the relentless assault of nature's fury. Elena's mind drifted into a restless haze, haunted by the silence beyond her fragile refuge. She wondered how much longer she could endure this loneliness, this gnawing ache of absence that clawed at her soul. Her icy hands clenched tighter around the necklace, knuckles whitening. Her gaze fell upon it, eyes clouded with unshed tears. A faint resolve hardened within her. She could not afford to surrender to despair. Her eyes flicked to Yuki, who sat silently nearby, ears perked and eyes alert. The wolfdog's presence was a quiet anchor, a reminder that even in her pain, she was not entirely alone. Yuki shifted slightly, nudging her gently with a cold nose. Elena looked at the creature, her heart tightening anew. The animal's calmness seemed to speak a silent language, an understanding, a promise of companionship. She reached out with trembling fingers, stroking Yuki's rough fur, feeling its coarse texture beneath her fingertips. For a fleeting moment, the weight of her grief eased just enough to breathe. Suddenly, a faint noise outside shattered the fragile calm. Her senses sharpened instantly, every nerve alert. The sound was subtle, an almost imperceptible rustling, a soft shuffle that didn't belong to the wind or wildlife. Her breath caught as she strained to listen, her body tensing involuntarily. The noise repeated, now closer, something moving through the underbrush with deliberate caution. Elena's eyes darted toward the shelter's entrance, her mind racing to interpret the threat. Was it a creature of the forest? A wandering survivor? Or something else entirely? Her heart hammered against her ribs, but her face remained composed, masking the surge of anxiety. Yuki rose silently, ears twitching toward the approaching sound. The wolfdog's muscles coiled, ready to spring or retreat at a moment's notice. Elena's grip on the necklace tightened, her fingers digging into her palm as she fought to steady her trembling voice. "Who's there?" she whispered, voice barely audible over the whispering wind. Silence answered her, thick and oppressive. Then a faint crack, like a branch breaking under weight, echoed nearby. Her eyes widened and her pulse quickened. A shadow flickered at the edge of the shelter's opening, wavering in the moonlight. Elena's breath hitched, and she instinctively moved closer to Yuki, seeking some semblance of safety. Yet, her curiosity refused to be suppressed. The figure outside hesitated, then stepped forward slowly, cautious and silent. The tension stretched unbearably. Elena's hand moved instinctively toward her side, fingers closing around a small, jagged stone she'd picked up earlier. Not for attack, but as a talisman, something to hold on to if needed. Her eyes flicked to Yuki, who was now alert, tail low but poised, ready to react. The shadow paused just outside the shelter's entrance, then stepped into the faint glow of the moon. It was a figure cloaked in darkness, face obscured, movements hesitant. Elena's breath caught in her throat. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, one trembling, the other silent and unmoving. Finally, the figure spoke softly, voice muffled but unmistakable. "You're not alone here. I saw your fire, and I came to check if you're safe." Elena's body stiffened, her mind racing. Trust was a fragile thing in these woods, yet something in the stranger's tone felt genuine. She hesitated, then slowly nodded, her voice trembling as she replied, "I'm managing. Who are you?" The figure stepped closer, hands visible now, empty, open. "Name's Mira. I've been wandering these woods for some time. I saw your fire from afar. I mean no harm." Yuki sniffed cautiously, then relaxed slightly, sensing no immediate threat. Elena's shoulders eased just a fraction, but her eyes remained wary. The storm of grief inside her still threatened to overwhelm her, yet a fragile thread of hope tugged at her heart. Mira crouched a little, eyes kind and steady. "You're far from everything, but you're not alone anymore. I can help you, if you're willing to trust." Elena looked down at her trembling hands, then back at the stranger's face. A decision hovered just beyond her grasp, a step toward connection or retreat into her pain. She inhaled deeply, feeling the icy air fill her lungs, and made her choice. "I'm willing to listen," she whispered, voice hoarse but resolute. A faint smile touched Myra's lips. "Good. We'll figure this out together." As the wind shifted once more, carrying whispers of the forest's secrets, Elena felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. A cautious, fragile promise that her journey was far from over. Elena moved cautiously onto the icy surface, her boots crunching softly as she tested the thin, glassy plain ahead. The heavy gray sky pressed down, clouds thick with snow, muffling sound and heightening the silence. A bitter wind tugged at her coat, carrying a faint, unsettling creak from beneath her feet. Her breath formed fleeting clouds in the frigid air, and her fingers tingled as she clung to her coat, eyes fixed on the fragile, shimmering ice. Beside her, Yuki kept pace, ears alert and tail low but tense. The wolf dog's nose twitched, sensing the cold, the faint scent of distant snowstorms, and something else, an unfamiliar trace that made her pause. Yuki pressed closer, silent reassurance in her steady presence. Elena's trembling hands tightened their grip on her coat, her gaze flicking across the vast, treacherous expanse ahead. She knew the danger, the risk of the ice cracking beneath her weight, yet an inexplicable pull pushed her forward. She took a tentative step, her foot pressing carefully onto the surface. The ice responded with a low, ominous groan, a warning that seemed to echo in the stillness. Her muscles tensed instinctively, but she kept her balance, testing the strength beneath her. The sound was sharp, like a whisper of impending collapse, yet the surface held firm. Her heart fluttered, fear intertwined with a stubborn resolve to move ahead. Each step was deliberate, slow, as if walking a tightrope suspended over an abyss. Yuki remained close, nose low to the snow, eyes scanning the horizon and the distant silhouette that had appeared in the corner of her vision. Elena's gaze flicked to her companion, drawing reassurance from her calm stance, but her stomach clenched with unease. The landscape was frozen, silent, yet beneath the surface, the ice seemed delicate, unpredictable, ready to give way at any moment. The snow crunched beneath her boots as she advanced, her breath visible in the cold air. Her mind drifted to memories, loss, pain, moments buried beneath layers of ice and snow. Was crossing this frozen plain a test of her courage or a reckless act driven by desperation? She hesitated briefly, then pressed on, each step deliberate but cautious. A sudden, sharp crack beneath her foot froze her in place. Her muscles tensed, instinct warning her to retreat. She paused, eyes narrowing as she studied the shimmering surface. For a long moment, silence stretched unbearably. Then a subtle shift, an almost imperceptible crack, made her heart race. Was it a warning or a coincidence? She couldn't tell. Her pulse quickened, but she refused to turn back. Carefully, she shifted her weight, testing again. Yuki barked softly, a low, reassuring sound, then nudged Elena's hand with her cold nose. Elena instinctively stroked her companion's head, drawing strength from her quiet confidence. Her gaze shifted to the distant horizon, where a faint outline was emerging, a figure moving slowly through the snow, deliberate in its pace. The figure appeared small and shadowy, but unmistakably human. It moved with purpose, as if waiting for Elena to notice. Suspicion and curiosity warred within her. Who was this stranger? An ally or an adversary? The cold sharpened her senses, making her hyper-aware of every detail. The distant silhouette, the faint footprints leading away from her, the whisper of wind through the trees. Her grip on her coat tightened as she considered her options. She took another cautious step forward. The ice groaned again, louder this time, echoing her movement. Every step seemed amplified in the cold silence. Yuki matched her pace, ears flicking toward the distant figure, muscles tense but controlled. The stranger remained still, as if carved from ice itself. Yet Elena sensed an unspoken presence, something watching her, waiting for the right moment. A gust of wind swept across the lake, swirling snow into the air and obscuring the figure's outline. Elena's heartbeat quickened. She hesitated, weighing her options, then made her decision. Drawing a deep breath, she pressed onward, each step deliberate, her eyes fixed on the silhouette. As she drew closer, the shape became more distinct, a tall figure wrapped in dark cloth, head bowed, standing still. The disturbed snow around it revealed footprints leading into the forest, suggesting recent passage. Elena's mind raced. Was this someone from her past, or perhaps a messenger from the forest itself? Her curiosity deepened, but her caution remained sharp. The ice beneath her crackled again, louder and more insistent. Her stomach clenched, but she kept her focus. Her hand instinctively reached into her pocket, clutching the small stone she carried, a talisman representing her resolve and connection to her purpose. She squeezed it tightly, grounding herself amid the swirling uncertainty. Yuki pressed closer, her body tense but calm, eyes fixed on the figure ahead. Their silent exchange fortified Elena's courage. She took another step, then another, each one an act of defiance against her doubts and fears. Finally, she was within a few yards of the shadowed figure. The wind died down momentarily as if holding its breath. Elena saw the outline more clearly now, a tall, cloaked figure, head bowed, seemingly waiting. Her mind spun with questions. Should she call out? Approach cautiously? The uncertainty was overwhelming, yet her legs refused to stop. Suddenly, the figure lifted its head. Bright, piercing eyes met hers across the icy expanse. A shiver ran down her spine, not from cold, but from the weight of the moment. Whatever awaited beyond this fragile crossing, she understood one truth. There was no turning back now. The stranger's faint nod was her only response. Elena's muscles tensed, her heart pounding with a mixture of dread and determination. She took another step forward, then another, each one bringing her closer to the unknown. As her foot finally touched the thin ice near the figure, a new chapter quietly began, one that would reshape her understanding of herself and her journey. The vast, frozen silence seemed to hold its breath, and Elena felt a strange, calm resolve settle within her, a fragile hope amid the trembling surface beneath her. Elena paused at the threshold of the abandoned cabin, her breath fogging in the frigid air. The snow surrounding the structure had settled into thick drifts, partially burying the weathered walls and giving the place an almost forgotten presence amid the silent wilderness. The door hung slightly ajar, its hinges protesting with a faint creak as a gust of wind nudged it. She hesitated, her hand hovering uncertainly over the worn wood, torn between the urge to step inside and the instinct to turn away. Her fingers trembled, caught between curiosity and caution. The interior was cloaked in shadows, dimly illuminated by the weak, gray daylight filtering through the open doorway. A stale, musty scent of aged wood and dust filled the air, mingled with a faint metallic tang that made her stomach tighten. Piles of debris cluttered the uneven floor, torn fabric, broken utensils, a rusted lantern, silent witnesses to years of neglect. Every step she took was deliberate, her eyes darting into every corner, wary of fragile surfaces that threatened to crumble under her touch. Near a battered, scarred table, a leather-bound journal lay partially concealed beneath a tattered cloth. Its cover was cracked and faded, edges curling with age. Elena knelt, her fingers trembling as she brushed away dust and debris. She hesitated, then gently lifted the journal. The paper inside was fragile, yellowed with time, ink faded and smudged in places. Her breath caught as she carefully opened it, heart pounding softly in her chest. The first page revealed hurried, uneven handwriting. She squinted, trying to decipher the words. Tomorrow I will leave this place. The memories here are too heavy, too bitter. But perhaps someday someone will find what I leave behind. A shiver ran through her, not just from the cold, but from an inexplicable sense that these words were meant for her, that they belonged to someone who had once stood here, lost and searching. She turned more pages, revealing sketches, notes, fragments of thoughts, some indecipherable, others hauntingly clear. A hastily drawn map in the corner caught her eye. Its markings were unfamiliar, cryptic. Her fingers traced the lines, feeling the weight of secrets buried within. Was this place a refuge, or a site tied to memories she would never fully understand? Her curiosity deepened, but a flicker of unease lingered. Suddenly, a faint noise upstairs shattered her focus. A soft scuff, a shuffle, almost inaudible but undeniably present. Her breath hitched, eyes darting toward the staircase leading upward. Shadows flickered at the edge of her vision, and the house seemed to hold its breath along with her. Every nerve tensed, sensing something unseen. Her grip tightened around the journal. The uncertainty gnawed at her, yet an irresistible pull urged her onward. She hesitated only briefly before rising cautiously, moving toward the staircase. Each step was deliberate, her footfalls muffled on the creaking wood. Her hand clutched the railing tightly, the other clutching the journal as if it were a talisman. The upper floor was darker, the small, shuttered windows casting fractured shadows across the cramped space. Dust motes floated in the stale air, undisturbed by years of neglect. At the top, a narrow corridor stretched ahead, leading to several closed doors. She paused, listening intently. Silence. Then, a faint rustling, like fabric shifting or something settling into place. Her mind flashed with memories of fragile vulnerability, but she pressed forward, driven by an instinct she couldn't ignore. The noise emanated from the last door at the end of the hall. Elena approached slowly, fingertips brushing the doorframe, sensing the thickening air. With a gentle push, she eased the door open. Inside, the room was cluttered but appeared untouched by recent activity. An old bed with a faded quilt, a battered trunk, and a small window letting in a sliver of pale light. Her eyes fell on a heap of old clothing draped over a chair. As she stepped closer, a flicker of movement caught her peripheral vision. She spun sharply, heart pounding anew, only to see a shadow slip behind a tattered curtain. Her breath caught, and her skin prickled. She felt the presence, yet saw nothing concrete. A sudden creak behind her made her whirl around. She turned to find the room empty. The shadow vanished. Her grip on the journal tightened, her mind racing to interpret the strange sensations. Was it her imagination, or had she brushed against a fragment of someone else's story? Perhaps a lingering presence, bound to this place by silence and time. Deciding she could not ignore the significance of what she'd uncovered, Elena took a cautious step back toward the staircase. Her instincts urged her to retreat, but her resolve strengthened. She slipped the journal into her coat pocket, feeling its fragile weight against her side. The house's quiet murmurs seemed to echo around her, secrets waiting to be uncovered. As she moved toward the exit, a sudden noise from downstairs shattered the stillness. A soft thud, followed by a faint shuffling. Her muscles tensed instinctively. She hesitated, then descended slowly, every sense heightened. Her footsteps muffled on the creaking floorboards, each step a delicate balance between retreat and confrontation. Reaching the ground floor again, she paused at the doorway, listening. The house seemed to hold its breath once more. Then, from the shadows, a faint movement, something shifting behind the wall, or perhaps just the settling of the old structure after years of silence. Elena's gaze flickered to the open door, to the snow-covered world beyond. A decision pressed upon her. Stay and investigate further, risking unseen dangers, or leave this place behind, clutching her fragile discovery. Her fingers brushed the edge of the journal as she drew a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill her lungs and the weight of uncertainty pressing down. Finally, she stepped outside, closing the door softly behind her. The snow crunched beneath her boots as she moved away from the cabin, her mind swirling with questions. The house's whispers echoed in her ears, but she felt a shift within, an awakening of resolve. Whatever secrets this place held, she was now a part of them, forever entwined with its silent stories, ready to face whatever darkness or light awaited her next. Elena hesitated at the top of the staircase, her fingers gripping the rough wood of the railing as if it could anchor her to reality. Outside, the wind battered the cabin relentlessly, tearing through the cracks and forcing the old logs to groan under the storm's assault. Shadows flickered erratically across the walls, cast by the flickering candle she'd lit earlier, its flame trembling in the gusts that seeped through every crevice. Her chest tightened, each breath shallow and rapid, as her mind raced to interpret the chaos around her. A sudden, deafening crash upstairs shattered the fragile silence, making her recoil. The sound ricocheted through the narrow corridor, echoing like a gunshot in her ears. Her body froze, eyes darting toward the staircase, heart pounding so loudly she feared it might burst from her chest. What was that? An animal? A falling piece of furniture? Or something more sinister? Her instincts screamed to retreat, to vanish into the night and leave this place behind. Yet, her legs refused to obey. An invisible force rooted her to the spot, compelling her to move forward despite her mounting dread. Cautiously, she placed her foot on the first step. The wood beneath her creaked ominously, each step deliberate and measured, as if crossing a boundary between safety and peril. The storm's fury outside made the house sway and groan, the ancient beams protesting against the wind's relentless assault. Shadows danced along the walls with each gust, creating a disorienting mosaic of movement that blurred her perception. She pressed her palm against the wall for stability, trying to drown out her pounding heart with the cacophony of the storm. As she ascended, her senses sharpened. Every creak, every whisper of wind became a potential threat. Her mind conjured images of what might be lurking above, an intruder, a restless spirit, or an unseen presence she couldn't yet grasp. Her knuckles whitened as she clenched her fists around her coat, forcing herself to push onward. The air grew colder, the darkness thicker, pressing against her like a tangible weight that threatened to crush her resolve. Reaching the upper landing, she paused, listening intently. Silence. Or was it? Her ears strained against the storm's din, trying to detect any movement. The hallway stretched out before her, shadows pooling at its edges. She hesitated, her gaze flickering from door to door. The scent of damp wood and lingering smoke filled her nostrils, stirring memories of past struggles, moments when she had felt powerless. Now, standing amidst the chaos, she felt a strange mixture of vulnerability and a flicker of determination. Suddenly, her eyes caught a flicker of movement, a shadow darting across the far wall, just beyond her line of sight. Her breath caught, and her body tensed instinctively. The form was fleeting, almost too quick to see, yet enough to ignite a surge of adrenaline. Her mind spun with possibilities. Was it an apparition, a reflection, or something more tangible? Her grip tightened on the doorframe as she stared into the darkness, her pulse hammering in her ears. Then, the shadow lingered, wavering as if beckoning her. Her brow furrowed. Was it a sign, an invitation, or a warning? The storm's roar outside seemed to echo her internal chaos, the wind shrieking in protest, trying to drown out her doubts. Elena's breath grew shallow as she fought to steady herself. She knew she couldn't stay here forever. She had to decide to confront whatever awaited upstairs or to retreat into the shadows and abandon this place. A sudden, loud thud from above shattered her resolve anew. Her stomach clenched, and she instinctively backed toward the door, her fingers trembling as she reached for the handle. The storm's howling intensified, rattling the windows and shaking the house's foundations. Her mind spun with possibilities, an intruder, a fallen object, or something unexplainable. But beneath her fear, a flicker of resolve ignited. She refused to be paralyzed by dread. Whatever was upstairs, she would face it. Taking a deep breath, Elena stepped back into the hallway, her movements cautious but purposeful. Her hand hovered over the doorknob at the corridor's end, feeling the rough texture beneath her fingertips. The door was slightly ajar, its creak muffled by the wind's relentless push. She hesitated, then pushed it open slowly, revealing a dimly lit room beyond. Inside, a flickering candle cast trembling shadows along the walls, revealing a space filled with old furniture and scattered papers. The scent of wax and aged paper mingled with the dampness in the air, creating an atmosphere thick with memories and secrets. She entered cautiously, her eyes scanning the room. An old desk stood against the far wall, cluttered with torn papers, a quill, and a half-empty bottle of ink. An ancient chair was pushed aside, its legs squeaking as she brushed past. On a nearby shelf, a weathered journal lay open, its pages filled with hurried sketches and trembling handwriting. Elena's gaze lingered on it, feeling an inexplicable pull, as if it was waiting for her, whispering secrets from a past she was only beginning to understand. Suddenly, a loud thud echoed from upstairs once more, jolting her. Her breath hitched, and she instinctively stepped back, her heart hammering anew. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the door handle, torn between fleeing and confronting. The storm's roar outside grew deafening, almost as if it responded to her rising anxiety. Her jaw clenched, and her resolve hardened. Whatever had caused that noise, whatever lurked upstairs, she would face it, not out of bravado, but because turning away would deepen her helplessness. With deliberate purpose, Elena moved toward the staircase again. Her steps were slow but steady, each one weighing heavily on her resolve. Her eyes fixated on the shadowy figure at the top, which flickered like a flame in the darkness, a silhouette that seemed to beckon or warn. Her fingers brushed the cold wood of the railing, steadying herself. As she approached, the flickering shadow seemed to pulse, almost alive, urging her onward. Reaching the top, she paused, her gaze locked on the faint outline of the figure, a shadow that shimmered in the dim light, almost like a flickering flame. Her muscles tensed, her breath shallow. She could feel her determination solidify, pushing aside the doubts that threatened to overwhelm her. Whatever awaited, she would face it now. No more hesitation, no more retreat. The staircase groaned beneath her weight as she stepped closer, each movement cautious but resolute. The shadow at the top flickered again, as if alive, inviting or warning. Elena's hand grasped the cold railing, her eyes fixed on the silhouette. Her heart hammered in her chest, but her resolve remained unshaken. She was no longer merely reacting to the storm or shadows. She was ready to uncover the truth hidden within this darkness, or be consumed by it. In that moment, the storm outside reached its crescendo, and the house seemed to breathe with the fury of the tempest. Elena took a final step forward, determined to confront whatever lay ahead, knowing that her understanding of the past and her future depended on the choices she made in this moment. The shadows stretched before her, but she no longer feared them. Instead, she stepped into the unknown, prepared to face whatever secrets lurked in the darkness. Elena moved cautiously through the frostbitten forest, her breath forming fleeting clouds in the cold night air. The snow under her boots muffled her steps, each movement deliberate and quiet, as if she feared disturbing the silence that enveloped her. The moon, hidden behind shifting clouds, cast a muted, silvery pallor over the landscape, highlighting the silhouette of an ancient, solitary tree standing at the heart of the clearing. Its twisted roots sprawled across the earth like the veins of some dormant beast, cloaked in moss and dirt, forming a natural throne amid the stillness. She paused, her gaze fixed on the towering figure. Her senses sharpened, alert to the faint creak of branches swaying in a breeze. Yet no other sound disturbed the night. A prickling sensation crawled along her spine, not from the cold, but from a deeper, instinctual awareness. Her hand reached out, trembling slightly, and brushed against the rough bark. The texture was coarse and weathered, yet beneath her fingertips, she sensed a subtle pulse, an almost imperceptible vibration that seemed to hum with ancient life. Memories surged suddenly. Her child smile, the echo of laughter long faded, now intertwined with the quiet presence of this venerable guardian of the woods. She closed her eyes briefly, allowing the flood of images and feelings to wash over her. Grief and longing softened into a quiet reverence. Her fingers traced the carvings etched into the bark, symbols and signs she didn't fully understand but recognized on a visceral level. They shimmered faintly in the moonlight, whispering secrets in a language older than words, as if inviting her to listen. A sudden shift in the air caught her attention. The scent of pine, snow, and earth grew more intense, filling her lungs with each deep breath. It was as if the forest itself exhaled, embracing her in a silent, empathetic gesture. Her trembling fingers pressed more firmly against the trunk, seeking connection, understanding. Then, unexpectedly, the tree trembled, its roots shifting and stretching as if awakening from a long slumber. A faint, warm glow emanated from within its core, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She instinctively stepped back, eyes widening with awe and trepidation. The glow intensified, flickering like a living thing, radiating warmth and mystery. She could feel the energy radiating outward, beckoning her closer, whispering promises of insight. Her hand moved again, hesitant but driven by an undeniable pull, pressing against the bark. The surface rippled beneath her touch, responding as if the tree recognized her presence, as if it was sharing a secret. Suddenly, her mind flooded with vivid images. Her child's face, fleeting glimpses of unfamiliar forest scenes, shadows flickering behind her eyelids. Whispers echoed in her ears, voices calling her name in a tone both intimate and strange. Her chest tightened with emotion, but amid the ache, a new clarity emerged, an understanding that this place was more than a monument to her loss. It was a witness, a silent keeper of her story, offering her a fragment of its ancient wisdom. A gentle breeze stirred. Memories surged suddenly. Her child smile, the echo of laughter long faded, now intertwined with the quiet presence of this venerable guardian of the woods. She closed her eyes briefly, allowing the flood of images and feelings to wash over her. Grief and longing softened into a quiet reverence. Her fingers traced the carvings etched into the bark, symbols and signs she didn't fully understand but recognized on a visceral level. They shimmered faintly in the moonlight, whispering secrets in a language older than words, as if inviting her to listen. A sudden shift in the air caught her attention. The scent of pine, snow, and earth grew more intense, filling her lungs with each deep breath. It was as if the forest itself exhaled, embracing her in a silent, empathetic gesture. Her trembling fingers pressed more firmly against the trunk, seeking connection, understanding. Then, unexpectedly, the tree trembled, its roots shifting and stretching as if awakening from a long slumber. A faint, warm glow emanated from within its core, pulsing gently like a heartbeat. Elena's breath caught in her throat. She instinctively stepped back, eyes widening with awe and trepidation. The glow intensified, flickering like a living thing, radiating warmth and mystery. She could feel the energy radiating outward, beckoning her closer, whispering promises of insight. Her hand moved again, hesitant but driven by an undeniable pull, pressing against the bark. The surface rippled beneath her touch, responding as if the tree recognized her presence, as if it was sharing a secret. Suddenly, her mind flooded with vivid images. Her child's face, fleeting glimpses of unfamiliar forest scenes, shadows flickering behind her eyelids. Whispers echoed in her ears, voices calling her name in a tone both intimate and strange. Her chest tightened with emotion, but amid the ache, a new clarity emerged, an understanding that this place was more than a monument to her loss. It was a witness, a silent keeper of her story, offering her a fragment of its ancient wisdom. A gentle breeze stirred, carrying a faint murmur, soft, almost like a breath, yet unmistakably present. The words were indistinct, but their tone resonated deep within her soul, an invitation, a revelation, an acknowledgement. Elena's hand withdrew slowly from the bark, her fingers trembling with a mixture of reverence and comprehension. She looked up at the towering tree, tears threatening to spill but held back, her gaze filled with a newfound respect. In that moment, a subtle shift occurred. The grief that had threatened to overwhelm her receded slightly, replaced by a fragile sense of acceptance. The connection she felt was real, anchored in the roots of this ancient sentinel, rooted in her own tangled past. The forest had listened to her sorrow, kept her secret, and now seemed to offer her a gift, a piece of its enduring, timeless knowledge. She drew a deep breath, feeling the cold air fill her lungs and then slowly release it. Her shoulders relaxed, and a faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips. The tumult of her inner world was not vanquished, but she carried away something precious, an insight that her pain was part of a larger, ongoing story. The forest silence had spoken, and she listened, understanding that her journey was far from over. As she stepped back from the tree, her gaze lingered on its sprawling roots. The whispering wind grew clearer, more insistent, a gentle call to continue, to trust in the path ahead. Elena's heart, once heavy with despair, now carried a quiet resolve. She realized her purpose was no longer solely about escaping grief, but embracing the truths woven into this place's very fabric. With deliberate steps, she turned away from the ancient guardian, her silhouette faint against the moonlit clearing. The night stretched before her, cloaked in mystery but no longer entirely forbidding. The forest had unveiled part of its secret, and within her, a subtle awakening had begun, a promise of healing rooted in the ancient tree's silent strength. The wind's murmur softened into a gentle hum, as if the trees themselves acknowledged her newfound understanding. Elena moved forward, each step lighter than before, her spirit gradually steadied. The shadows of the woods no longer seemed solely a realm of darkness and loss, but a sanctuary of remembrance and renewal. The forest had revealed its truth, and in doing so, had illuminated her own path. The journey remained ongoing, but she now carried within her a fragile ember of hope, kindled deep in the roots of the ancient tree and rooted firmly in her soul. Elena's grip tightened around the frayed edges of her child's photograph, her knuckles whitening as a gust of wind tore through the clearing. The snow resumed its relentless descent, muffling sound and cloaking the landscape in a ghostly hush. Behind her, the dense forest loomed with twisted shadows, its canopy creaking under the weight of the storm's aftermath, while ahead, the open plains stretched into darkness, an uncertain expanse she knew she must cross but feared to face. Her eyes flicked from the picture to the ominous sky, where clouds churned and thickened, signaling an approaching storm. The weight of her decision pressed heavily on her chest, each breath shallow but deliberate. Yuki, the wolf dog, stood a few paces away, ears alert and eyes fixed on her, muscles tense with anticipation. The animal's gaze was steady, conveying a silent message. She needed to move, to leave the comfort of the shadows before the night deepened her despair. A shiver ran down Elena's spine, not from cold, but from a sudden, instinctive awareness. Her mind raced with memories. Her child's innocent smile, the warmth of their last embrace, the ache of loss that still gnawed at her soul. Tears threatened to surface, but she clenched her jaw, pressing her fingertips to her lips in a futile attempt to hold them back. Yet, amidst the grief, a flicker of resolve ignited, a fragile ember that refused to die. The wind carried more than just scent. It whispered of change, damp earth, decaying leaves, and the faintest hint of snow. It was as if the forest itself was urging her onward, pushing her beyond her comfort zone into the unknown. She cast one last glance at the tangled shadows behind her, recalling how they had shielded her through countless lonely hours. Now, they seemed distant, almost indifferent to her choice, as if the forest had already relinquished her. Her gaze settled on the open land ahead, a vast, empty stretch that promised freedom but also concealed dangers. The moral dilemma gnawed at her. To remain would be to surrender her quest, to abandon the hope that had sustained her since stepping into these woods. To move forward was to risk everything. Hidden threats lurking in the dark. The open plain beckoned again, its cold vastness pressing into her bones. Snowflakes continued their descent, gentle yet persistent, as if the universe itself insisted on renewal. Her mind churned with conflicting thoughts. Should she cling to the past or venture into the uncertain future? The decision was hers alone, and the stakes had never been higher. A deep breath steadied her trembling nerves. She lifted her chin, shoulders squared, and exhaled slowly, embracing the silence. The hesitation was gone. Her heartbeat steadied, resilient despite the weight of grief. With cautious resolve, she stepped into the snow-covered field, the muffling whiteness swallowing her footsteps. As she moved, her eyes caught another flicker, a shadow darting at the edge of her vision, blending seamlessly with the falling snow. Her breath hitched, and she froze, heart pounding not from cold, but from a new sense of awareness. Was it watching her, or was her mind playing tricks? The shadow withdrew behind the trees, leaving behind an unsettling ripple of unease. She felt a prickling at the back of her neck, a reminder that unseen eyes might be tracking her every move. Her grip on the photograph tightened again, grounding her amid the swirling uncertainty. The wind tugged at her coat, whispering promises of change, of endings and new beginnings intertwined. She paused briefly, then made her choice. Step by step, she pressed forward, into the open, into the unknown, into whatever lay beyond the shadowed trees. Her muscles tensed, but her spirit remained unyielding. The cold seeped into her bones, yet she welcomed it, embracing the silence and the darkness. She was ready to confront whatever mysteries awaited, whether from the land or within herself. The first light of dawn seeped through the thinning clouds, casting a gentle amber hue across the forest's edge. The air was crisp, carrying the earthy aroma of damp soil mingled with the scent of awakening foliage. Elena moved with quiet purpose along the narrow trail, her footsteps deliberate yet soft, each step echoing her newfound determination, an unspoken resolve she had only begun to acknowledge. Yuki padded beside her, ears perked, nose to the ground, instinctively attuned to the subtle shifts in the forest's awakening symphony, as if sensing the same promise of renewal that shimmered in Elena's eyes. She paused, glancing back at the dark silhouette of the trees, their shadows retreating as the sun's rays pierced through. The forest had once been her refuge, a sanctuary where her grief echoed loudly, but also a place where fragments of herself had started to reassemble. The darkness was lifting, replaced by a luminous glow that illuminated her path forward, hinting at hope rather than despair. A gentle breeze stirred the leaves, whispering secrets of life, hope, and the faint promise of healing. Elena's gaze lingered on the dense woods, memories flickering like fleeting shadows, moments of pain intertwined with fragile hope. Those sorrows still clung to her. It no longer dictated her existence. The ache had become woven into her being, yet she sensed a subtle shift, an almost imperceptible whisper of relief coursing through her veins, emboldening her steps. Her confidence grew with each stride, her movements more assured. The uneven trail beneath her feet was strewn with fallen branches and patches of moss, but her trust in her instincts and her surroundings steadied her. Yuki occasionally paused to sniff the air, ears twitching at the faintest sounds, then resumed his steady trot, as if urging her onward. Their bond, forged through shared silence and mutual understanding, deepened with every step. As she ventured further, the landscape gradually opened into a clearing bathed in sunlight. Wildflowers, emerging through melting snow, peeked shyly through the earth, colors muted yet vibrant against the rich soil. The silence here was profound, broken only by the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant chirping of awakening birds. Elena inhaled deeply, feeling the cool air fill her lungs, a stark contrast to the oppressive darkness she had left behind. She lifted her eyes to the pale blue sky streaked with wispy clouds, sensing a renewed vitality pulsing through the world around her. Her mind drifted momentarily to the past, nights filled with ache and longing, then gently shifted toward acceptance. The forest's mysteries had begun to settle into a comforting rhythm. What once seemed threatening now felt like an ally in her healing process. Suddenly, a faint, almost imperceptible sound reached her ears, a delicate crunch beneath the undergrowth, like footsteps on snow. Her senses sharpened instantly, instincts alerting her to unseen movement. She slowed, her gaze scanning the shadows. Nothing immediate appeared, but a prickling awareness crept along her skin. The forest's tranquil silence had been gently broken, not with hostility, but as a subtle reminder that life persisted, unpredictable and alive. Yuki's ears twitched, and he turned his head toward a distant thicket, tail low but alert. Elena followed his lead, her heart steady despite a flicker of curiosity. She knew the woods held secrets, some lingering in shadows, others whispering in the wind. The faint sound persisted, urging her to remain attentive rather than retreat. Her hand instinctively rested on her side, where a small pendant hung, her talisman, a symbol of hope and remembrance. Its warmth reassured her, grounding her in the present. She fixed her eyes on the source of the sound, then paused, eyes widening slightly as she glimpsed a faint flicker, a shimmer of light, almost like a distant star caught among the branches. Between the trees, a soft glow danced, flickering in and out of view. Elena's breath caught. She hesitated, torn between curiosity and caution. The light seemed alive, pulsating with an ethereal, almost otherworldly rhythm that defied explanation. It beckoned her forward, whispering promises of discovery and closure, yet also warning of the unknown. Yuki moved ahead again, nose to the ground, then halted, eyes fixed on the shimmering point. Elena followed, her steps measured, deliberate but light, mindful of the fragile moment. As she drew nearer, the glow intensified, revealing a delicate, translucent radiance hovering just above the undergrowth. Her hand trembled slightly, reaching out instinctively, driven by a mixture of awe and the desire to understand. The luminous flicker pulsed once more before dissolving into the air, leaving behind a lingering warmth that spread through her fingertips. Her heart beat softly, not with fear, but with a burgeoning sense of wonder. It was as if the forest was offering her a fragment of its ancient soul, a gift of trust, patience, and resilience. She looked around, eyes moist with emotion, feeling the silent watch of ancient trees. The moment was fleeting, yet transformative. The forest's quiet voice had finally broken through, whispering of healing, acceptance, and the dawn of a new chapter. Elena closed her eyes briefly, breathing in the harmony of life and renewal that surrounded her, grounding herself in the present. When she opened them, her gaze was steady, imbued with a quiet strength. She looked once more at the distant trees, then turned her face toward the rising sun. Her steps resumed, now confident, embracing the uncertainty ahead with a gentle smile. The weight of grief still lingered, but it no longer enslaved her. Instead, it had become an integral part of her story, a thread woven into her ongoing journey. As she moved forward, a faint, familiar murmur drifted on the breeze, a whisper of life, of stories yet to be told. Perhaps a new chapter was beginning, or maybe the forest silence had finally yielded to this subtle hum of awakening. Elena's heart beat with quiet hope, her spirit ready to face whatever lay beyond the trees, carrying the truth that she was no longer lost but slowly, surely, finding herself again.